Welcome to Cheltenham 2013. We're here at the Blue Square HQ for the week, and I'm delighted to be joined by Tom Lee from Channel 4. Tom, fantastic festival ahead of us. The weather hasn't been so kind. We're looking at racing on soft ground. I think that was pretty much unheard of according to the prices for the ground, certainly in the last few weeks. But it looks as if it's going to be soft ground under those frost covers tomorrow. And we start with the Supreme Novices Hurdle. Now, 6 of the last 8 runnings have gone to a horse at double-figure prices and no winning favourite in the last 8 years. But a small field tomorrow.
It is a small field, but it's high on quality. That's the key thing. Everybody looks forward to this race every year. And in saying that, you've got the hot favourite, Is He the Good Thing, My Tent or Yours. He's a short price, but it's worth remembering that on so many occasions in recent years, the likes of Cousin Vinny, the likes of Q-Card, the likes of particularly Dungwib, who went off an eye-watering 4-5 and could only finish third, having charted a wide course, they all got turned over. So this is a race that you bookmakers, you know, Blue Square, I'm sure they'll be out to get the favourite tomorrow by virtue of the fact that there's good opposition. Jeski, he's 4 from 4 over hurdles. Una 2's won a bumper and 2 over hurdles. Will like that soft ground. But a stat you alluded to there, and something that I'll touch on as well, 7 of the last 8 winners of this race came from outside the front 3 in the market. And I just wonder if that opens it up for a horse who really has a penchant for Cheltenham, and that is Dodging Bullets. A 10-to-1 shot with Blue Square overnight, and I think that's a big, big price by virtue of the fact he was 4th in the Triumph last year, had a wind operation, came back, showed he really relishes the test at Cheltenham, won there twice, particularly the second time pre-Christmas, giving weight to the very highly rated River Meg, who also runs here. Then he ran in the Christmas hurdle. As a 4-year-old, don't forget, that was a real good effort behind Darlan. And beyond that, Nichols has kept him back specifically to keep him fit for this race, keep him fresh for this race, likening to the likes of Noland and Alfaroff, previous stable winners of the race. So I think for the opener, you've a real chance there at a double-figure price with Dodging Bullets. Yeah,
Dodging Bullets is 10-to-1. I suppose there's one slight stat against Dodging Bullets in that he was 3rd last time out, and most of the winners in the last few years have actually been winners last time out. But I think there's excuses there, certainly excuses, and what you've described, the way that Nichols has actually produced him for this race, might actually be a positive rather than negative.
Yeah, and I would also just say, anybody looking at the favourite thinking, well, OK, fair enough, I'm still going to have a good, long, hard look at My Tent or Yours. Just worth remembering that another good horse, Get Me Out of Here, won the Betfair hurdle there at Newbury 3 years ago, and then turned up here and was beaten by Minora. So not necessarily a stepping stone to success in the opener at the festival.
No, I'm going to go for Jeski in that race, 9-2, the second string, as you would have thought, behind My Tent or Yours in terms of the ownership of JP McManus. But you're going for Dodging Bullets there. Moving on to the 205, and this is one of my favourite races of the week. It's the second race of the week, and it's the Racing Post Arkle Challenge Trophy Chase. And they all seem to have been swerving Simonsig. And I think what Barry Geraghty said about this horse suggests why.
Yeah, I think that's very much the case, because this isn't a real attractive price for punters out there who are looking for value in the field. But if there is to be a couple of short ones on the first day, I think this guy will be one of them. He was by far and away the leading novice hurdler last season, at his peak rated 161. Fingal Bay, the only horse ever to lower his colours in 8 starts under rules, and he's taken to fencing very well. 2 wins out of 2 for an aggregate 84-length win. I think that tells its own story. On the festival preview circuit, I've been banging the drum for a very good horse in Overturn. People love him, great dual-purpose performer, rated 112 on the flat, 168 over hurdles, and second in a champion hurdle. But the key thing, you said it to begin with, the ground's gone soft. What's going to be under those covers? That probably will blunt his speed. And sitting in behind on cruise control, you'd think, will be Barry Geraghty. So yes, he'll be odds on, but he's one for the multiples. People will be playing up the odds on shots. They'll be looking at Quivega later on. They'll be looking at Simonsig, maybe Hurricane Fly, perhaps My Tent or Yours, and they'll be saying, where's the banker material? I think it's probably Simonsig. Just an honourable mention of the Irish. Willie Mullins brings over our Vika Legionnaire, who fell in the Irish Arkle. Prior to that was 3 from 3. But just have a look at number 2, Bailey Green. You guys, Blue Square, are 28-1. I'm not saying he's going to win this race, but he might just be a hint of value for the forecast by virtue of the fact it's very unusual this in an Arkle. This horse has run 15 times over fences, winning 6. 6-race winning streak last summer. So just maybe he's a horse with a little bit of race nous, if you like, who might be able to come here and just, if there was to be a little blip, maybe if Overturn's speed is blunted, perhaps he could creep into second. But I think this goes the way of the favourite. Your odds on overnight, and quite rightly so. hard to see Simonsig being beaten, in my opinion.
Yeah, very disappointing for punters that this has cut up to a 7-runner race, because you're talking about a horse there, Bailey Green, and although obviously it would be slightly shorter, maybe around the 20-1 mark, if there were 8 runners, you'd be getting a decent place return there. And I actually feel the same about a bet that I had in midweek, which is Majala, and from Tom George stable. And I think he's got some good form. Obviously not up there with a class of Overturn or Simonsig. Certainly what Barry Gerrity has been saying about Simonsig, as fast as Sprinter Sacra, if not faster. So 4 to 6 to win the race. But if you fancy backing Simonsig at an odds against price, we're offering 2 to 1 that Simonsig wins by 6 lengths or more. And I think Overturn will be the key to that, Tom.
Very much so, because he will blaze off out in front. He'll be the, you know, if you like, the hare. And it very much depends how he's able to jump out of this ground, because if it blunts his speed, and very much Donald McCain has shied away from running him on ground officially soft. They ran him on good to soft, but they've tried to avoid this. I was with Donald at Chepstow on Saturday, and I said, well, has this snookered you? And he said, well, it's not ideal. He said, we will run, but we would have preferred it faster. So I think that probably tells its own story. And the distance will be absolutely fascinating by virtue of the fact that Simonsig, if he lives up to the star billing, Henderson's won this race 4 times before, he could absolutely blaze a trail. 6 lengths could be made to look a mockery. It could be 26.
So that could be a decent bet. Well, you won't find an odds-on shot in the next race, the JLT Specialty Handicap, and we're looking at a big field here, 24 runners, some big prices in there. It's 6 to 1 the field, Our Mick from the Donald McCain stable. And it has a stat to overcome, that none of the previous 10 winners have carried more than 11 stone 2. And this 7-year-old is going to be carrying 11 stone 4. And I think in a big competitive race like that, I think you need to be looking elsewhere.
Well, just an extension of that stat, that's a really good point. The last 13 winners were rated no higher than 143. Mick was placed in the race last year. He was 3rd last year off 144. Now he's 145. Did a good piece of work after racing at Bangor the other day. You've also got Fruitio Rooney, who was 2nd to Alfie Sherrin last year. But, exactly as you say, I think the value looks in trying to find something perhaps further down the weight. And there's a horse on 137 who's been sharply progressive since joining Mick Shannon. Is a horse called Loch Bar, who very much... They found the key to this guy. What a certainty he must have been the first day at Kempton off 108. Since then he's been 2nd at Ascot. A very easy win at Newbury, beating a horse of my own family's, actually Mountainous, who didn't quite squeak into the handicaps tomorrow. Had a nice break, 55 days to freshen him up. Thrives on the soft ground and a nice racing weight, 10-10. I see you guys are 11 to 1, and I think that's very fair each way value with Blue Square, because this is a horse who's done nothing but improve, and I think maybe there's still further improvement to come, so he might just have a little bit in hand over the handicapper.
Well, if you do fancy Loch Bar each way, we're paying 5 places on that race, a special incentive for each way punters on this big handicap with 24 runners. We move on to the 320, the feature race of the day, the Champion Hurdle. The last 3 winners are taking each other on, Tom. This is probably one of the best races of the whole festival. I mean, not just in terms of the fact that it is the championship race on day 1, but the fact that we've got Rock on Ruby, Hurricane Fly and Binocular all taking each other on for the honours, and an incredibly open market. Where would you put your money?
Well, here's what's interesting. All along, Blue Square, other bookmakers have had Hurricane Fly priced up about right, I think. They've kept him tight. They've looked what he's done this season. They've been impressed. However, as we reach the day of race market, I think on track, and I think the major bookmaking chains, I'd be surprised if Blue Square aren't looking to try and lay him tomorrow. You look at the depth of opposition. I'll give you a quick rundown. The Triumph winner of 2011, Zarkandar, 3 from 3 over hurdles this season. He's very tough. He's done absolutely, to coin the old racing phrase, nothing wrong. Look at last year's winner, Rock on Ruby. He's now wearing a pair of first-time blinkers. I wasn't that impressed at Doncaster last time. Yes, he won, but that was the day that, sadly, tragedy met with Darlan. Oh. I think probably, had they all stood up, Darlan would have beaten him that day. Look at the remainder. Well, you've got Grandaway, who is richly talented on his day, but has only seen the racecourse once in 15 months and missed his intended prep. That was in the Kingwell at Wincanton. Look at the remainder on the ground. Again, Donald McCain disappointed for Cinders and Ashes. And on all-known form this season, despite winning the Triumph last season, Countrywide Flame doesn't look quite good enough. And that brings us back to the favourite, Hurricane Fly, which he would be the first horse since 1975 in Comedy of Errors to regain the Champion Hurdle crown. But it takes a truly special horse to do exactly that. And in Hurricane Fly, I think we've got one. You look at him, And everything he's done this season, he looks a happier, more robust, more solid, more composed horse than he was this time last year. He's won 3 races this season, Punchestown, Leopardstown, again at Leopardstown. And yes, people will decry that and say, oh, listen, he bosses small fields on soft ground at the likes of Leopardstown. But don't forget, he's a previous champion hurdle winner. Yep. And he looks the real deal. Ruby Walsh, when he was interviewed yesterday, he described himself, and I quote, utterly perplexed about the negativity surrounding this horse. Yeah. And I'm utterly perplexed as well, because I think he's the real deal. And if he turns up in one piece on his A game, he wins.
Yeah, I think you're right in the sense that as bookmakers, if it drifts to 5-2, it's probably still a lay. But where does that mark actually go? And people talk about this is my lay of the meeting, but it is all relevant in the price. And I think, yeah, of course, we'd be happy as bookmakers to take 2-5 any other horse if we're laying a Hurricane Fly at 5-2 tomorrow. But I think if it approached any bigger, I think that the people could get involved on the basis of what you said. 9 years old. That looks like a negative on the stats, but one of the most impressive winners of the last 10 years, Rooster Booster, was 9 and won by, I think, about 10 lengths. So,
but again, as I already alluded to, it takes a truly special horse to defy the stats. Yes, he'd be only the 5th 9-year-old winner in 60 years, but even so, on his day, he truly is exceptional, this lad. So for me, the Hurricane to rule the roost in the champion, he can regain the crown, and I think the top of the head 9-4 with you guys is a very fair price.
Okay, well, I'm going to go for the 7-2 shot Zarkanda, because I think Zarkanda is very solid. Certainly one for your place pot, not likely to blow up. The 4 o'clock, well, it's the Glenfarclas cross-country chase, and some people don't really like this. They think it's a bit of a gap in the meeting. Others do. It certainly has its place. Now, last year, it had its place in the sense that everyone said, we just concentrate on the Irish runners, cross all the English runners out, and then we saw Balthazar King under Richard Johnson taking the right course this time, having not taken the right course a few months previous when probably having the race at his mercy, going to win at a decent price. Should we go back to the Irish runners? Was that just a blip?
I think it probably was. Look at the front of the market this year. Yeah, Ireland have won 7 of the last 8. Here they've got the likes of Outlaw Pete for the Halley family. A course and distance 3rd of November, came back in December 1 over the Banks course, warmed up with a nice 3rd at Thurles on Valentine's Day. You've got the likes of Sizing Australia, the winner 2 years ago. He's out of form now, so I wouldn't be getting too excited about him. The remainder, well, the Banks King Ender Bolger, he sends over 2, principally Arabella Boy. And seated here at December, but has won a couple of times around Punchestown, the second of which was the cross country in February. So with 10 stone 9, people will like him. But at double the odds, what price are you about the top one, Uncle Junior? Yeah, 7-1 with Blue Square overnight. He's got a lot of weight. He's got 11 stone 12. But think back to the likes of, for example, Spot the Difference 2005, Garde Champetre 2009. Those are clear examples of good, solid, robust horses being able to carry the big weights. And I think they are less apparent in this type of race around this track. So I would say that Willie Mullins sends over Uncle Junior. You get 7-1 an each way price, and he's rock solid. He won twice around the track, once in 2011 at the November meeting, a year later in 2012, and less than 12 months ago, 4 Mile 1 in heavy ground at Punchestown. He won the unique test, which is the Latouche. That, for me, is sufficient credentials. So 7-1, I think, is an absolutely ripping price. Okay, well, a much lower weight, I would go with any currency. 10 stone 2, 10-year-old now, but 11-1, has some decent place form around the proper course at Cheltenham. And but again, it's always that old debate, the stats saying horses turning up, trying these horses competitively for the first time.
Absolutely.
Put a line through. So that's a risk you take. Nice price, but there's the risk, and we'll see how that's played out tomorrow. Okay, now, most people's banker of the meeting, if you ask them at any point during the year, they would say Quavega in the Mare's Hurdle. She's made it her race, 4 winning years after White Oak won the first renewal for Donald McCain. She's 8-13 with us overnight, and some people might see that as buying money. Is the Maresfield just so bereft of quality that she just has to turn up to win? No, it's in no way bereft of quality. The likes of Un Artiste, there's some real serious mares in there. However, try and put this into context. You've got one who's so far above the remainder that if she lined up in the World Hurdle, she'd almost certainly be either singularly favourite, clear favourite in her own right, or joint or co-favourite. Therefore, in this company, she's an absolute mile clear on official ratings at level weight. And all that needs to be said really is that go back to the 30s, 32 to 36, 5 years in a row. The great Golden Miller won the Gold Cup. She can make festival history on Tuesday afternoon and make it 5 wins on the bounce in the Mares' Hurdle. I think it's that simple. I think 8 to 13. I know a lot of the firms are shorter, 4 to 7, 8 to 15, 1 to 2. So, quite honestly, I think you're potentially taking a risk there because she is that perfect material alongside Simonsig for the multiples. Yeah,
well, with Simonsig, we were obviously offering a win and distance double because Simonsig being odds on. We've done the same with Quevega, and to win by 5 lengths or more, she is 2 to 1. How does that sound, Tom?
Well, again, it's slightly different because there's a great big field here. There's 19 of them. She likes to be ridden with a bit more restraint. Bear in mind the Arkle's a small field, so I actually would potentially shy away from that and just let her win. If she wins by a length and a half, if she wins by a neck, they all count, and it's more important
especially
to
at
me
that price.
at that price, sure. So she'll get the job done, but I wouldn't be rushing in for the special on that occasion.
Okay, obviously an alternative way to play it would be to bet each way, and we're a quarter of the odds the first 3 home, and I quite like a horse called Cloudy Spirit for Reg Holinshed. Hasn't had the best festival preparation in that has run about 200 days ago on the flat and hasn't taken on hurdles for about a year, but I quite like Cloudy Spirit and won a decent race at Bangor about 2-3 years ago, which was very, very good form in a similar time to White Oak, the first winner of this race, and she could really... She could fill a place at 50 to 1 if you're looking to swerve the odds-on shot Quevega, which is many people's banker of the meeting.
That's the kind of tactics that used to net people, the old Channel 4 champion tipster back in the day, sneaking in with a 50 to 1 shot late on.
I'll be trying. And then we go on to the 5:15, the rewards for racing, novices handicap chase, a very, very competitive penultimate race on the card. We're 15 to 2 the field at the moment. Can't really find a favourite. The Druid's Nephew looks as though it will edge favouritism at around 7 to 1 there for Andy Turnell and Tom Scudamore. So also Colour Squadron has been well backed as well. So how would you see that between those market principles?
The horse at the front of the market, you mentioned the Druid's Nephew. I know there's also a few quid about for Colour Squadron in the early skirmishes. In isolation, with him, I certainly wouldn't get involved at any short price, 5, 6 to 1, somewhere around there, by virtue of the fact that, for me, he hasn't jumped very well to date. In a big field, at speed, his jumping's liable to go to pieces over those stiff fences. And I think there is one in there. The 7-year-olds have ruled the roost today, 8 runnings of this race, 5 of 1. Colour Squadron is 1, but for the reasons given, I'd be against him. One I really like stepping up in trip is one of the 2 Charlie Longsdon horses. Not Vulcanite, that you might obviously guess at, but a much bigger price. Down the bottom, Hazy Tom, who's neatly
16
weighted.
16 to 1, Tom.
16 to 1. I think that's very, very fair, and I'll tell you why. Key piece of form. His penultimate run was at Warwick in November. He beat Cantlow and Shangani. Cantlow is very much amongst the principals for the Burn Group on Thursday. Shangani runs here and is about half the price. What price Blue Square Shangani?
15 to 2.
Less than half the price. Cantlow has since franked that Warwick form twice and obviously goes for the Burn Group. Shangani has won twice and lines up here at 15 to 2. With Hazy Tom, he ran very well the next time as well and got a bit more experience. You can have 16 to 1 about a horse stepping up in trip, who might be something of a forgotten commodity. And don't forget that people might say, well, Charlie Longsdon's horses, perhaps they've been a bit out of form. Well, emphatically on Sunday, they were back in form. He had a double at Market Raisin to allay any of those fears. So I would say that at 16 to 1, you might be able to sign off the day with something of a flourish. So I think there's value there. What about yourself?
Yeah, we certainly might need one. Well, I do like Shangani, but slightly put off by what you've just said, because you seem to have looked
well, it's not to decry Shangani's chances.
No.
Shangani very much on a roll, and Venetia is having an absolutely amazing season. Merely that, if you like Shangani at 15 to 2, you'd have to be a squeak if he stays up in trip to Hazy Tom at 16 to 1.
Yeah, I think that will certainly be a saver of mine based on what you've said. So going back to the champion hurdle, well, if your horse is second by less than 3 lengths, we will actually refund all bets at Blue Square, and we're 5 places on the 240, as well as having those win and distance doubles on Quevega and Simonsig, those 2 odds-on shots, if you'd like to play that way. Tom, what's your best bet on Tuesday of the Cheltenham Festival 2013?
I would say that's very much between Dodging Bullets in the opener and Lochbar in the third race, the JLT. The price, they're both value. Blue Square are 10 to 1.
Without 5 places on for Lochbar.
And that's what sways it. 10 to 1 Dodging Bullets I would have rolled with, but I think 5 places each way is an absolutely cracking offer, so I struggle to see him out the frame the way he's improved. Marker 137, I think that's lenient, so at 11 to 1, I'll back him each way, please.
Well, let's hope you have a good day and join us tomorrow for Wednesday's Cheltenham Festival preview. Thanks very much.